Do you believe that everything you know about Elvis Presley's death is true? What if I told you that the King of Rock never died and that the evidence to prove it has finally come to light? Last week, Elvis Presley's former bodyguard told everything that happened to make the rock star disappear once and for all. But before we hear your story, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss videos like this. Now, stay with the report from Elvis Presley's former security guard. My name is John Carter. For more than a decade, I was the man responsible for protecting Elvis Presley, the greatest music icon the world has ever known. I wasn't just his bodyguard, I was someone he trusted completely. I saw up close the ups and downs of his career, the moments of glory and the darkest periods he faced. Today, after keeping a secret for more than 40 years, I feel that the time has come to tell the truth. It's not an easy decision, but I believe the world deserves to know what really happened to Elvis Presley. He didn't die on August 16, 1977. Everything you've heard about that day was carefully engineered, and I was one of the few people who helped make it possible. I know this revelation may seem absurd, even impossible, but I ask that you hear me. Throughout this report, I will present evidence, stories, and details that have never been made public before. Details that only someone who was next to him could know. What I'm going to share isn't just a tale about a star wanting to escape the spotlight. Is the story of a man who was consumed by fame, who needed freedom, and who, above all, wanted to survive. This is the truth he entrusted to me, and now I pass it on so you too will know what really happened to the King of Rock. I am John Carter, but for many years I was just the man in the shadow. My job was to ensure that Elvis could live and work safely, without worrying about the threats that always surrounded him. It wasn't an easy job, but I was proud to be part of the King of Rock's life. We weren't just boss and employee, we were friends. I joined Elvis's security team in the early 1970s when he was already a worldwide phenomenon. He needed people he could trust. And believe me, there weren't many. Fame came with a high price. They surrounded themselves with people who wanted something from them, money, power, or fame by association. But I was different. I never wanted anything more than to do my job and protect this man who, deep down, just wanted peace. Working with Elvis was intense. He was generous, but he was also constantly battling his own demons. The pressure of fame, demanding contracts, and even real threats to his life were constant. There were nights when he confided in me his desire to escape. He talked about how he wanted to give up everything, stop being Elvis Presley, and just live like an ordinary man. Over time, this idea stopped being just a thought and started to become a plan. He chose me because he knew I wouldn't betray him. "John, if anyone can help me out of this, it's you," he said to me one night, looking into my eyes. That sentence marked my life. There were times when I thought he was joking, but it soon became clear that his mind was made up. He had resources, connections, and a strategic mind. And most importantly, he had something that many people didn't know: a network of loyal people. I was one of them. I'll share the deeper details soon, but I want you to understand that for Elvis, faking his death wasn't just a whim, it was a necessity. And it was in this context that I became not just a security guard, but part of a plan that would change everything for him, and, as you will see, for the world. It was August 16, 1977, a day the world would never forget. That day, the news of Elvis Presley's death exploded like a bomb. Fans cried, the media went crazy, and it seemed like the world had lost music's biggest icon. But what no one knew was that the day was carefully planned, and I was there to make sure everything went exactly as it should. That morning, Elvis seemed calm but also anxious. He knew that would be the day he left everything behind: the fame, the stages, the crowds. However, there was also relief in his eyes. "It's today, John. It's today that I'm free," he told me with a tired but sincere smile. The plan was drawn up weeks before with the help of a few people he completely trusted. The goal was simple: create a convincing narrative so that the world would believe that Elvis Presley had died. The medical team was notified, the scene was prepared, and everyone involved knew exactly what to do. That day, as the team discovered Elvis's body at the Graceland mansion, I was behind the scenes, making sure he left discreetly. While the world was focused on the chaos inside the house, Elvis was taken to a safe location away from prying eyes. What many people don't know is that even the supposed body shown to the family and later at the funeral was not the real Elvis. Yes, there was a body. I can't reveal details, but enough was done to ensure the story was accepted. Most people simply believed what they saw, or what they wanted to believe. After he left Graceland, his new journey began. Elvis knew he could never go back to living the way he used to. He had a new identity, a detailed plan, and an immense desire to live away from the spotlight. In the days that followed, I stayed in touch to make sure he was safe and to sort out the final details of his new life. The world cried for a man who had actually been reborn. To the public, Elvis Presley was dead. For me, he was finally free. And that's why I say, I know the truth. I've been there. And the truth is far more extraordinary than any story you've ever heard. Faking Elvis Presley's death was not something decided overnight. It was a plan that required precision, trust, and above all, total secrecy. It wasn't just an act of escape, but a carefully crafted strategy to allow him to disappear without a trace. At least, that's what we hoped. It all started when Elvis realized that his life as a star was becoming unsustainable. He could no longer bear the pressure of fame, the exhausting routine of shows and personal conflicts. In addition, there were darker issues, accumulated debts, threats from people he trusted, and even problems with the government. He felt he had no other way out. The first step was to assemble a small trust group. He chose people who had been by his side for years, including me, his personal doctor, and a longtime friend who was a logistics expert. No one else knew about the plan. Not his immediate family, not the Graceland employees, not even most of his team members. Elvis wanted everything to look as natural as possible. The plan involved creating a plausible situation that would explain his death. A heart attack, something that would have been expected, given his unstable health and lifestyle at that time. To ensure that no one doubted it, a body was prepared. I can't reveal all the details, but I can say that it was convincing enough to fool both the medical team and the fans who attended the funeral. The schedule for August 16th was perfectly timed. On the morning of that day, Elvis remained in an isolated room inside Graceland, where he could not be seen by anyone, not even his employees. Meanwhile, another part of the plan was implemented, preparing the scene of his death. When the moment arrived, the medical team was called, paramedics arrived, and within hours the world believed Elvis was gone. While all this was happening, Elvis was already far away. He was transported to a secret location, using routes that would not arouse suspicion. He was later taken out of the country with false documents and a new identity. The network of contacts he had created over the years, influential, loyal, and discreet, was crucial for everything to work without errors. However, faking the death of a legend is not something that is done without risks. During the first few months, there were moments of tension. Rumors began to circulate, theories began to emerge, and Elvis had to maintain an extremely low profile. He knew that if he was discovered, everything would fall apart. I know this all sounds like a movie script, but I say with conviction, this was reality. The plan was executed so precisely that to this day, most people have never questioned the official story. And that's why I'm here, sharing everything, because the time has come for you to know the truth. I know it's hard to believe that the King of Rock faked his own death and lived under another identity, but the evidence I'm going to present is irrefutable. These are not just words or theories, but evidence that has never come to light until now. The first test is the most direct: photos and videos. During the years following his death, Elvis was seen in unexpected places but always in disguise. There are records that show a man with characteristics very similar to his in different parts of the world, especially in South America. Some of these images even circulated on the internet, but were always discarded as similar. What few people know is that these images were taken by members of his team who wanted to make sure he was okay. Another piece of evidence is in an audio I received directly from him years after the event. In it, Elvis talks about his new life, thanking me and other members of his team for helping him. He mentions details that only someone who lived close to the King of Rock could know. This audio, which I guard with great care, will be revealed to the public soon. Furthermore, there are documents that prove the use of a false identity. During his escape, Elvis used the name John Burroughs, a pseudonym he had already used on small occasions when he wanted to go unnoticed. I have in my possession a copy of a passport issued under that name, dated 1978, shortly after his death. The signature? It is unmistakably his. Another proof that few know about is in his music. If you listen to some of his latest recordings, you will notice hidden messages that suggest his intention to disappear. Many fans called this a coincidence, but for those who know the truth, it is clear as water. He deliberately left clues, as if he wanted fans to find out one day. Finally, there are reports from people who found it. I'm not talking about fans or conspiracy theorists, but respected individuals who recognized Elvis in different parts of the world. These reports have been discredited over the years, but when you connect them with the evidence I've presented, it all starts to make sense. I know this all may seem extraordinary, but remember, Elvis Presley wasn't just a star. He was a man desperate for freedom, and he succeeded. He lived out of the spotlight, away from the pressure, away from the fame that consumed him. Now, with this evidence, you can begin to see the truth that has been hidden for decades. After leaving Graceland that August afternoon in 1977, Elvis Presley embarked on a journey few could have imagined. The first stop was a safe place, away from the eyes of the media and fans. It was an isolated country estate, prepared months before, where he could rest and begin planning his new life. The first months were the most difficult. Elvis was used to the excitement, the applause, the instant recognition. Suddenly, he was an ordinary man, living in anonymity. For him, this was liberating and scary at the same time. He knew he needed to learn to be someone completely new, a challenge for someone who lived like a legend. Over time, he moved abroad. According to the plan, it was essential that he stayed in places where his appearance could go unnoticed, or where people would not be so obsessed with his figure. Elvis spent much of the early 1980s in South America, especially in places like Brazil and Argentina. He chose these regions for their tranquility and less exposure to the mass culture that idolized him. Elvis wore simple but effective disguises, ordinary glasses, hair dyed or cut differently, and clothes far from the extravagant style that marked him. He adopted the name John Burroughs and began to create a new routine, living simply. Although he still had access to a fortune, he chose to live modestly, helping local communities anonymously. A curious aspect of his new life was how much he loved freedom. He could go to the market, walk in a square, talk to people without fear of being recognized. However, he also missed his music. In some confidential reports, Elvis would have performed in small bars and community events under different names, just to feel the pleasure of singing again, but without attracting attention. Despite his new life, Elvis never completely moved away from his old identity. He closely followed the impact of his death and even laughed when he saw theories about him being alive. "They're more right than they know," he once told me during a phone call. He also had sporadic contact with people he trusted, including me. I have received letters and phone calls at important times, mainly to update you on your health and well-being. Despite being far away, he still cared deeply about his family, although he could not maintain direct contact to avoid suspicion. The last time I heard from Elvis was in the early 2000s. He was living in a small town, tending a garden, and living the way he always dreamed, away from pressure and fame. He was happy. "John, you gave me my life back," he said, and those words stay with me to this day. Elvis didn't die. He chose to live. And for anyone who had the chance to know this story, it is impossible not to realize how much he really deserved this second chance. You may be asking yourself, why tell this story now? Why keep this secret for more than 4 decades and only now decide to reveal it? The answer is not simple, but involves respect, loyalty, and above all, the desire for the truth to finally come to light. For many years, I felt my role was to protect Elvis, even after his death. He trusted me, and I took that responsibility very seriously. It was my mission to make sure he could live the new life he wanted, away from the all-consuming spotlight, and that's exactly what I did. But now, the world has changed. Many of the people involved in the plan are no longer here. The very culture that surrounded Elvis evolved, and the obsession with fame gave way to a greater understanding of the human side of celebrities. Today, I believe people are more prepared to understand why Elvis did what he did, and more importantly, to accept it. Another reason is personal. I'm getting older, and I know my time in this world is limited. I don't want to take this secret to the grave. I want the world to know the man Elvis really was. A human being who loved life, who faced unimaginable challenges, and who, in the end, did what he needed to do to survive. I also want to correct some myths that have arisen over the years. The truth is more incredible than any conspiracy theory. It's not about aliens, cloning, or reincarnation. It's about a man who took control of his destiny, something we all want at some point in our lives. Furthermore, I believe that telling this story is a way of honoring Elvis's legacy. He was always more than a singer or an icon. He was a symbol of freedom, of courage, of going against the rules. And that's what this revelation represents, the freedom to live his life as he wanted, without caring what others would think. Lastly, I'm here because I know there are many people who still have questions, who feel like something is out of place in the official story. I'm here to give them the answers they're looking for, to present the evidence I've hidden for so long, and to share the real story of the King of Rock. This isn't just the story of Elvis Presley. It's the story of a man who found his peace, and in doing so, showed the world that sometimes freedom is worth more than any fame. Now that you know the truth, I hope you see Elvis Presley in a new light. He was not just the King of Rock, an icon immortalized by his music and stage presence. He was a man who, above all, sought his freedom, something many of us would never have the courage to do. Elvis knew that faking his death would be risky and that the world would never see him the same way again. He was aware that this would create myths, theories, and even absurd stories. But deep down, he believed it was worth it. He wanted a life where he could wake up every morning without having to carry the weight of being a living legend. Elvis's legacy is not just his music or his cultural impact. It's also the message that life is yours to live, even if it means making difficult decisions. He showed us that sometimes we need to abandon everything to find peace and happiness. For the world, this revelation represents more than a finally confirmed conspiracy theory. She is a reminder that celebrities are human, that behind the lights and the applause, there are people with fears, dreams, and limits. Elvis's story makes us reflect on the pressure we put on public figures and how this pressure can consume their lives. Now, the question that remains is, what will we do with this truth? For me, sharing this story is my way of ensuring that Elvis's memory is celebrated, not just as a star, but as a man who had the courage to seek his freedom. If he's still alive today, living in some corner of the world, he's seeing the impact he made, not just as an artist, but as a symbol of reinvention and courage. And if he is gone, then let this story serve as a tribute to the life he chose to live. The King of Rock may have left the spotlight, but he never left our hearts. And now, his true story can finally be told, not as a mystery, but as a human legacy that transcends music and fame.